Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gayest Generation, where we hear LGBTQ older adults speak for themselves. My name is Jacob. I'm so glad you're tuning into this episode. Every episode, we sit down with a different member of the LGBTQ community who laid the foundation for the freedoms we have today. So, in this episode, we speak with Michael Brown. We chat about being the gay son of a trans parent, the queer refuge that is pop culture, and how coming out can feel like casting a magical spell. This is the Gayest Generation. Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the Gayest Generation. I'm so excited to be here with Michael Brown. Michael or Mike?
Michael.
Yes. Now, before we get started, do you mind introducing yourself? Tell us your age and how you identify.
My name is Michael Brown, and my age, I just turned 54 on the 21st of October, and I identify as he, him, his, cis male.
Wonderful. We're so glad to have you here today.
Yeah.
Now, before we get started, let's have a little conversation about the language we'll be using.
Sure.
Some of what our interview will be about today is about your father and how she came out as trans later in life.
Yeah.
Throughout the conversation, what pronouns should be used and when should they be used? And tell me a little.
I think there's a lot to unpack, and I want to be respectful of the tone and how he identified throughout his life. And I think a big part of my father's life existed as being David. And it wasn't till later on that he started to open up and really start to embrace their true identity. And I think with my father, there was David, where we would use the proper pronouns, he, him, his. But then there was this other side who was Ellen. And Ellen would, I think, identify as female. And I think, could I say what her pronouns were? I don't think my father ever had the conversation about pronouns, but I do know at a young age, my father identified as being female. So I think that David learned to compartmentalize those two identities and had to navigate that world they lived in.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to know because they're no longer with us.
Right.
But I wonder if it would be fair to say that they went by all pronouns, or that one pronoun or the other didn't, or in different times of their lives.
Yeah. I think that to look at identity, I think we also have to look at especially the idea of privilege. And David lived in a very rural area of New England and worked in a very male-dominated, hyper-masculine field. And I think when you're socialized in that environment so long, that it becomes ingrained in who you are. And I know that it was a big part of his identity. And I know that this female side that existed, and I again, when I say that the side of female existed, I'm just trying to establish the the dichotomy of both of those. And so I think that it was difficult for the understanding of the traditional terms of female and male. I don't know if I'm going in the direction that you hope, but I think that with privilege, some people who are transgender may be able to live openly. I think David had to tread that very cautiously and had to be strategic in terms of who he disclosed that identity of who they were.
You're saying because of the privilege or lack thereof that David had in his life, this conversation about pronouns and how we have this conversation about pronouns in modern times doesn't exactly fit over David's identity.
I don't think so.
So this is all to say that it's complicated.
It is complicated.
And we're going to do our best to be respectful of David, to be respectful of Ellen.
Yes.
And that we might use words like transvestite or transsexual. We understand that those words have changed now.
Yes.
That's not the lingo that we use. Or lingos is belittling. That's not the vocabulary that we use. But it's the vocabulary we used way back when.
Right.
So all of this is a big preface. Just a note about language as we get into this conversation. But this conversation is between you and I. Can you tell us where you're from? Tell us about what kind of kid you were. Let's start at the beginning.
I grew up in a small New England town called Laconia, New Hampshire. And I think the kind of kid I was, I strived for attention and wanted to get my parents to notice me, my grandparents to notice me. And I think I acted out in some ways. And there was good and bad about that.
Give me an example.
My mom will bring up a story about how when I was a kid, I would have this dramatic flair about me, and I would kind of fall to the floor in a toy store if my grandmother didn't buy me a certain toy I wanted.
Okay.
And I remember, as a kid, locking myself in my grandparents' car because I wanted them to take me to Dairy Queen, and I wasn't going to unlock the car until they took me. So, yeah, there were a lot of big, dramatic situations.
I wonder if there's any other drama queens out there listening to this. I think you're in good company.
Thank you.
I think you are far from the only one. I have a very... Oh, I just sounded really loud for a second. It scared me. I have an understanding of being a Michigander, being from Michigan, Midwesternness. What is New England like? And especially what was New England like when you were growing up?
New England growing up in the 80s was very, at least the area I grew up was very homogenous. Everyone in a small town knows everybody, knows everybody's business.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you can't help walk around town and bump into the school teacher or the doctor, or it's just a very small knit community. And where I grew up was made famous in the 80s for a movie called On Golden Pond.
Yes. Okay.
With Katharine Hepburn and Henry Fonda. So very picturesque New England. Mountains, lakes, very just, it was a vacation destination.
I actually spent some time in New Hampshire, Lake Winnipesaukee.
Yep, that's where I grew up, right on Lake Winnipesaukee.
Oh my gosh, most beautiful place in the world.
Thank you.
But it's not like Michigan lakes where it's like, not the Great Lakes, of course, but one of our million other lakes where it's warm. I would jump into Lake Winnipesaukee and I'm like, holy.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's so beautiful.
It is beautiful.
As you're growing up, when is the first time, if you can remember, the first time you bumped up against the idea of gay?
Mm-hmm. I can recall, I'm dating myself here.
Hey, that's what
1976, being in kindergarten, and the school that I attended had these open concept classrooms, and you just entered this large room, and there would be a sandbox station, there was a paint station, there was this makeshift house, and you would go into the house, and I remember there being bean bags inside, and it was a little, pretend sink and oven, and it just was to resemble a house. And you would go in there and you'd play house with the other kids in your class. And I remember being in that situation and not wanting to play house, but not with a mommy, but with another dad in the situation. And there wasn't anything sexual about it, but that to me felt right at the time. It felt normal.
In the way that it might feel normal for a young girl to be in the playhouse playing mommy and daddy, it was natural for you to play, well, daddy and daddy.
Yeah.
Did you have any value attached to that? Did you know that was different? Did you know that was possible? Or were you just a kid being a kid?
I think I was just a kid being a kid.
In these conversations, that's something that always comes up. Is it's just like, oh, I was just doing what I was doing. I didn't know that I was supposed to be doing this or that. Because when you're a young kid, you're just...
Right.
When did you know that maybe you weren't the only person in the world playing daddy and daddy? Or that there was maybe other people like celebrities or people in your school or family members that also might be gay or queer or whatever language best describes?
I remember I can, allude to some things that now I can say, oh, that to me feels comfortable in terms of being gay or having a lot of camp that drew me in. And, one of them, I remember Joan Rivers. She used to host The Tonight Show when Johnny Carson was off. And I remember going and sneaking downstairs and watching Joan Rivers. And she would always come out with these big outfits and just, had these vibracious colors and sequined gowns, and she was just so damn funny, and she had this thing that she would say, "Can we talk?" and she just was so larger than life, and I was so drawn into that and felt a sense of humor, but also a sense of comfort. And it was 30 years later. I was in Warren, Michigan, and she was doing a dinner show.
Oh my gosh.
And I got the chance to go backstage and meet Joan Rivers, and I told her what she meant to that young boy growing up in rural New England who couldn't figure himself out. But she was kind of like that person holding that light up for me to tell me that you'll be okay, that you're all right with who you are. And she would make herself the center of jokes. And I think that was the other part that made me feel okay with myself, that someone else was okay making themselves the center of the jokes. And I think as a gay person, we deal with a lot of insecurities and a lot of self-esteem issues. And to have that connection is so important at a crucial age of 13 or 14 years old.
My next question was going to be, even before we know that we're gay, we find ourselves, gay men find themselves attracted to people like Joan Rivers. What is that instinct about? But I think you described it in such, so perfectly said. Somebody who's not afraid to put themselves in the center of the joke, but is also glamorous and is different, pointedly different. Mm-hmm. And that's where like, oh, I like that.
Yes.
Especially when that person is funny or, loud. It's like two magnets.
Yeah.
But I'd like to read a book on that. Like, before I know that I'm gay, why did I know I like Cher? Or like, why was
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's endlessly fascinating.
I think that they are these larger than life figures who just draw us in and just kind of give us the ability to feel okay in this world.
Absolutely. Ooh, now I'm on a tangent in my head. But, so you're growing up, from your peers, what do you hear about being gay, or what is it like to be gay during that time, which I'm mid-'80s?
Mm-hmm. So I will say that I buried this whole idea of being gay. It wasn't that I was blind and I didn't see what that world looked like in my environment. And we'll talk more about this. I'm thinking when we discuss my father. It was a very hostile environment to be gay. I did my best to adapt and to socialize in a way that would not bring any attention to me. I remember there being this young person in high school or middle school who was very open. And it was a brutal environment. I mean, they were thrown into lockers. They were called faggot. They were just victimized because they did not want to live closeted, or they were just living their most authentic self. And I think that might have been the case with this person. And I look back now and I think to myself, that person had the biggest balls than anyone I know. To get up every morning and to go to that school, that's big balls right there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think today in 2024, there's this easily accessible narrative where, you might come out when you're 14 and your parents are confused, but then they give you a big hug and then it's Heartstopper. You know what I mean? And that wasn't the case for everybody. It's still not the case for everybody today, but certainly not 10, 20, 30 years ago and beyond. I think it's important for people to understand what it's like to keep a secret like that. When you were keeping something like that inside, what did your day-to-day look like emotionally?
Well, I have written a book.
Yes.
And in the book, I talk about pop culture being an escape for me. And my taste in pop culture is very broad. I mean, I like everything from, Star Trek to Cher, Madonna, all of that. So it's very broad. I love horror movies. And I think pop culture was an escape for me. Instead of having to deal with the reality of the moment, dealing with the pain of the moment, I'm going to go spend 30 minutes and watch an episode of Three's Company and escape that pain.
Wow. Yes. I can relate to that personally. I think so many other people, gay, lesbian, trans, bisexual, queer people at large, we have these relationships with culture that inform our inner lives. During those times, I think that the word escapism has such a negative connotation, but no.
Escapism is a survival mode.
Yeah.
Especially if you're gay.
Yes.
Especially if you're keeping secrets.
Mm-hmm.
You need to learn a way to survive. Mm-hmm. And if that is what you're doing to survive, and you don't have anyone who is there to make sense of your reality, you need to create your own reality.
Oof. I will speak for myself. As an adult, I'm an adult. Yeah, I guess I am. As an adult, I am so thankful for having that inner life. And I speak with people, heterosexual people, and it will click for me sometimes, and I'll go, they've never built an inner life. These passions, these interests, a certain level of imagination, an ability to be my own friend. Mm-hmm. Other people, for better and for worse, didn't have to develop that.
Yeah.
I had to develop that, or else my life would have taken a very different turn. And I'm so thankful for it.
I think what I'm hearing from you is that it helped you kind of find yourself and who you were at that moment in your life, and all of those pieces of culture kind of gave you that sense of self, right?
Yes.
And I think with my situation, I had an outlet of friends to go to. Mm-hmm. I think what I was escaping from, I think when you're in a childhood situation where there's some complex narratives and you're dealing with some adult themes, it's difficult for you as the child to process those realities. Mm-hmm. And so I think I compensated by, and yes, I think the Joan Rivers, I think the Paul Lynns, they kind of validated what I started to figure out about myself, but they were also an opportunity to escape.
I see.
Myself.
Yes. Oh, this is so interesting and complicated and complex. And it's the type of thing you could talk about forever.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to say being closeted is great.
No.
You get to fall in love with, 20 seasons of Friends. Like, that's not what I'm saying. And I hate Friends. I don't know why I said Friends. Friends is not funny. But there's this thing about an inner life and pop culture and how it interacts with your identity and as a kid, and it's complicated.
It is. It is.
Whew. So you're closeted throughout high school?
Closeted through high school too.
And you're what's it like to leave high school and go to college?
I didn't go to college right away.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Oh, I didn't know we were going to unpack this, but we will.
We can keep it packed too. It's up to you.
High school was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was difficult due to my it very well could have been because of my sexuality and keeping that repressed. I think I in high school I discovered other things that captured my attention. I started to, smoke marijuana. I started going to parties. I focused more on socialization than I did on academics.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens in my junior year is that, and I later read about this in a Time magazine article, there was a phenomenon happening in public schools, and it was called push-out.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of dropout, it was push-out. And so what they did is if you were considered a problem, they wanted to remove that problem from the equation. And so at the end of my junior year, I should have known something was going to go down. I did return my senior year of high school, and it was how it worked is they were handing out schedules alphabetically for the upcoming year. And I remember gathering in the cafeteria to get my schedule, and everyone got their schedule but me.
You're
and
like, what?
The vice principal at the time, he seemed confused about what was going on, and he said, "Well, let's go upstairs and I will figure this out and we'll look into it." So I remember going in there, and I'm just there was a line of chairs to his office, and I remember just taking one of the chairs, and he calls the superintendent's office, which is, the other side of town.
Mm.
And he brings me in and says, "Oh, we need to meet with the principal." And so I go in, and both myself, the vice principal, and the principal sit around the table, and he says, "We're going to dismiss you from school, but we can offer you an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide to do a semester at night school and you are able to perform at a certain level, we will accept you back the following winter semester." I think, that was it was a lot for me to process. And I think what it did, it was not a empowering approach at all. If anything, I think it threw me into a spiral.
Mm.
And so I attempted to go back to night school. And I did finish out the semester, but after that, the idea of returning to the public school system just completely turned me off. Mm-hmm. And so I just finished out through adult education.
Yep. Okay. There are so many paths, and also everyone thinks the path involves college. College right after. There are so many paths.
Yeah, there are.
As you're entering adult education,
Uh-huh.
do you have any idea of what you want to be when you grow up? Or what does the future look for you at that moment?
It looks very small.
Yeah?
The future looks very small. I think at that time I needed to get my high school diploma because it was a diploma program that I did. And I think I was just kind of looking at that goal with tunnel vision, and that was the only thing that I could think at that moment I needed to achieve was to get that high school diploma. And I think what really was a game changer for me was a friend of mine was talking about this new program called AmeriCorps.
Okay.
And do we want to go into that?
Sure. Oh,
Okay.
do you want to go into it?
Sure, yeah. I loved it. That was the best experience of my life.
For those who don't know, tell us about what AmeriCorps is.
AmeriCorps was this national service initiative which was instituted with the Clinton administration, I want to say in 1993, where if you did 1,700 hours of community service, you were awarded a weekly stipend. You were awarded health insurance. You were awarded, if you had any student loans at the time, they would pay the interests on the student loans that you had. And then at the end of the year of service, you got an award. I think it's gone up considerably since then. I think it was like almost $5,000. And that was the game changer for me.
What kind of work did they have you doing?
Wow. We did various projects. I remember us doing a project at the veteran shelter in Boston. We worked in the soup kitchen there. One of the big things I remember about the veteran shelter was after you served the meal, they wanted you to sit down and really talk with the veterans, because it was important to kind of normalize their experience and their journey. The other thing that we did was, I remember you had to do an internship in AmeriCorps. That was one of the graduation requirements. And I remember myself and two other team members, we partnered with the food bank in Boston and helped set up a food pantry out of a church in South Boston.
Okay.
Where we would, do 2 times a week, families could come in and get a bag of groceries. That was a really rewarding project to experience. One of the other projects that really stands out in my mind is we were assigned to do a beautification landscaping project at Boston City Hospital. And it was just this field area that had overgrown for the past 30 years. And I remember people, the administration saying, we've had crime problems where people have been mugged, walking past this overgrown area. So our goal was to pull out all the bushes, all the trash, kind of replant some bushes there. And as it was almost like this sociological archaeology dig. We found, and this stands out in my mind to this very day, we found like 120 plus syringes.
Oh my gosh.
We found 2 guns.
Oh my gosh.
We found And I think one of the most profound things that we found was this garbage bag. And in the garbage bag was clothes, a notebook. There was like, I don't know, $7, $8 in there. And what we suspect was that, someone might have threw that bag in as they were going into the hospital.
Sure.
And never came out to get their belongings.
Whoa.
And it just, that in itself just stands out in my mind. And the other thing that AmeriCorps gave me, AmeriCorps kind of facilitated my coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel proud about who I was, because in AmeriCorps there were leaders who identified openly as gay, who were doing these incredible things. They were out there raising funds. They were out there advocating. They were out there community organizing. And I think prior to that, growing up in a small town, the people who I encountered who I suspected might have been gay, I didn't feel an affiliation to them. I felt like they weren't, and this is no disrespect to them, I just felt like they weren't credible to me. But these people in AmeriCorps, I felt like, shit, I can identify with them. Sure. I can feel an affiliation with them. So,
wow. This sort of work, you had said that your future looked small, but this sort of work widened your future.
It did.
So much so that you felt comfortable coming out.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to have positive role models, because if you think, not even if you have this conscious thought, but if the world around you is as such where you never see positive representation of gay people, then you're not gonna be like, I'm ready to come out. You're gonna be like, dude. But what was the coming out process like for you?
Yeah. So again, I was in AmeriCorps, and there was 10 months that we had to do the 1,700 hours of service work. And we were getting close to graduation. And part of graduation was this celebration event where they chartered a boat and they took us out into the Boston harbor there. And we had some party on an island out off of Boston. Mm. Yeah, it was a good time. And then they brought us back, and I knew I was going to tell this team member. He was on a different team. He wasn't on mine, but he was on I was going to tell him mm-hmm. that I was gay. I knew I was going to tell him. I felt like if I didn't take this opportunity, I was going to lose it. Mm. So before we docked, I said, I'll call him Marshall. Mm-hmm. I said to Marshall, hey, do you want to hang out after? We can go. I was a smoker then, and he was a smoker. You want to go hang out at that park over there, and we can smoke some cigarettes and talk. So he's like, yeah, sure, let's go do that. And we dock, we go over to this park, and I'm just kind of sitting there, and we're smoking, and I said, I think, and it was just this awkward way it came out. I said, I think I'm a lot like you. Mm. And I said, I think I may be gay. And when you say those words, it's like this weight is lifted off of you. It's just this cathartic moment where those thoughts that have been in your head for years and years are finally verbalized out into the open. And I'm sure you may be able to relate.
Sure, it's like a magic spell.
It is like a magic spell.
It's like, it's real. I said it.
Yeah. And you feel it too. You feel it in your body. You feel like all these sensations as this weight has been lifted. And at that moment, I knew that there was no way to go back, that it was there. I said it. And I remember him being so receptive to it. And he gave me a hug and just said, thank you so much for opening up and sharing that with me. It felt good. It felt, I think, for someone who spent a lot of time escaping reality through pop culture and things that, kind of kept you out of the reality of the moment. It felt very real.
With that positive experience, did you gain comfort to tell other people in your life, family members, your parents, your friends?
Yeah.
What was that process like?
So I started to tell other people in AmeriCorps. I think I was very selective. I didn't want to tell everyone. I think I wanted to be cautious on how I approached it. When I returned home, I started to confide in a couple of friends that I'm gay, and it was well received. I didn't tell my parents for a few years. I think that I didn't know how they would react or how they would interpret it. I think we had gone through so many different things throughout my childhood that I didn't feel safe sharing that information.
As I understand it now, you are a social worker.
I'm a social worker. Yep.
Why?
I think if you had to ask me why I'm a social worker, I would say that I was drawn to that through a lot of non-traditional means. I think AmeriCorps facilitated the future social worker in me, the whole social justice piece, advocating for individuals who are underserved. I think being that voice for someone, because I know at the end of the day what it's like not to have someone advocate for me. I wanted to be that voice for someone else. And I think as social workers, you have the opportunity there to be the voice for the silent.
Whew, I hear that. And I would be remiss if I did not mention today we are joined by your partner, Glenn. Are y'all married?
We're married.
Like with the Bible and stuff?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how you met?
We met online.
Yeah, where else? I'm not bumping into anybody at the bookstore.
Yeah.
You got to get online. Of course. Okay.
We've been married 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
And we've been together, it'll
Congratulations.
be 19 years next July.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. 19 years.
Yeah.
How? How'd you do it?
We enjoy one another.
Yeah.
We really do.
That is so important.
Yeah, it is.
What was it like to fall in love, or how did you know you were in love, or what's that like for a gay male? Just talk to me about falling in love.
Well, I'm going to say that one of the things, and I know that it can be a little controversial, one of the things that really connected Glenn and I is our fondness of Howard Stern.
Oh, okay, sure.
We love Howard Stern.
Sure.
And we really connected on the idea of Howard Stern. And you know what? Howard has probably become one of the most progressive voices in gay, trans issues, and has really put himself out there for the community. Even early on, I mean, he was having conversations about gay and lesbian issues before they were mainstream. So we really bonded over that. And I think that, you know, we've really grown to respect one another and just enjoy each other's company.
Sure. Simple as that. We just want to hang out together. It's cool.
We enjoy traveling.
I think people can overthink it so much, you know. Love, how all the different problems, how are we going to make it, all this stuff. It's like, oh no, we just like to hang out.
Yeah.
And talk, and like, we're just good friends.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but it's so huge.
It is huge. And I think I guess love can be complicated. I think it has to be rooted in respect and just enjoying one another. And I truly enjoy having Glenn in my life. He's just so important.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping all over the place.
Sure.
Let's take it all the way back.
Okay.
Can you tell me what your parents were like?
Yeah. My parents, I would say that my parents, we might consider them to be very liberal, very free. I think that they were young when I was born. I think that being a parent, they they did all the things that a parent should do. Go on trips and provide dinners, and it was not. I'm trying to find a cultural reference to. It wasn't Pollyanna. It was very like, this is reality. We're not going to sugarcoat it. This is how we talk. This is who we are. Emotions were very transparent. It didn't have, I guess, it's my reality, so it didn't have a parental feel, I guess.
Parental feel, like authority-wise.
Authority-wise, yeah.
It's not like I run this joint and you do what we say.
Well, there were consequences. There were consequences growing up, and we did have chores. We did have all that. So there was a sense of structure there. But I think that in a parental relationship, there is that nurturing. I mean, it was very hands off.
Okay.
Very hands off.
That I see. Were these people hippies?
I mean, yeah, in some ways their mindset was very, they worked 8 to 5 jobs. They owned a home, but they were very free in other ways of their life.
That kind of exists at the other end of like Midwestern Michigan parents.
Yeah.
It's like quiet silence. Don't talk about it.
Right.
We all know it, but don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Or like to show big emotions like anger or any sort of big emotion is like, no. But you're saying it's different than that.
It is. It's different than that. I think that, as a child, I had to figure a lot out for myself. I think that there were other factors competing for attention in the household.
I see. Family. Please.
No, I think that, though I know we're going to talk about my dad, I think that existed in our household. And I think though it wasn't openly discussed, though it existed behind closed doors, I think it took up some of the attention that might have been given as a parent to a child. Does that make sense?
If I understand you, you're saying, for those listening at home, what am I even saying? Your father was what would be called back then a transvestite or a cross-dresser.
Yes.
You didn't know that until
about 14.
Even until you were 14. So before that, you're telling me that was a focal point of what was going on and how time was spent in the home.
I mean, it was I have to assume it was a big part of what was going on in the home. And I think that my mother tried to manage the situation the best she could. And she did. I gotta give her credit. I think for a wife who was willing to embrace this idea that her husband, and I will say this, a husband who was very mechanically inclined, who worked in the machine industry, who built a house, who was award-winning downhill skier, who loved to scuba dive, who took my brother and I hunting, who taught us how to properly use a gun, did all of those things, but had this other side.
These things that we've deemed masculine.
These things we deem masculine.
This is what men do. And when you're 14, what was that moment like when you found that out about your father?
Very, let's say, confusing.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard to go back to that 14-year-old and really. I just remember him being confused and not really. What do I make of this? How do I interpret this? And I think they were I have to believe they were scared that the secret was out.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my mother, again, she really tried to get me into counseling to deal with this reality. I remember once a week I would go play checkers with this guy, and he would ask questions. How is it for you to understand this? And I think that's great because, I mean, he was trying to get me to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it was difficult for my mother to talk about it, for my dad to talk about it. So I needed someone to talk about it. And, we would go to a family session. And again, a 14-year-old, I think back to the 14-year-old sitting in that family session, and it was very Freudian of what the doctor said. Your father is the product of an overbearing mother and a punitive father.
Oh, jeez.
And that has just stayed in my head, and I think that, again, a 14-year-old, interpreting that reality and trying to, he's gay, I'm gay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going to bury that inner gay person. We're not going to talk about him. We're not going to acknowledge him because I have to deal with this.
And that was another question I had. With you knowing what you knew about yourself at that time with your sexuality, did that make it easier to accept your father, or did it complicate things?
Complicated things.
Yeah. Can you tell me about that?
I think I think at some point the term dad
Mm-hmm.
became difficult to say. I will say now that it's not a difficult thing. I think there was a healing that happened. I think that there a lot of animosity there, a lot of anger for that young kid. Why am I having to deal with this? Why do I now have to keep this secret? Why did I have to have this put on me? It made me very angry.
And I wonder if you also felt like, well, what the fuck is this? What did you understand about transness at that time?
The only outlet I had to understand this was going to that counselor once a week, and then in my mind that family counseling was either once a week or every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only time we talked about it.
Yes.
And I remember as a kid we had an abnormal psychology book in our house.
Oh.
And there was you could look up the terms, and transvestite was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all I had to really understand that reality.
It makes me think about that. You can turn the TV on today and you can see something like a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race, or
Mm-hmm.
a character in a primetime drama on CBS who is trans. And it's still very little, too little, but that's very different than what you had just described to me.
Right. I think today we are making the best strides at normalizing being transgender, which is important. I
Mm-hmm.
think we want acceptance. I think then it was this dirty secret that you don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And you bury it. And, I remember, my mother empowering herself with this. And she went to clubs in Boston in the 80s, early 80s, to allow my father to explore that side of himself. And I can't even imagine what courage it took. I know that it wasn't a comfortable situation. I think there was probably some awkwardness there, but she didn't sit on it and say, "Oh, woe is me," and I'm going to, shame my husband. I'm going to go with him, and I'm going to let him do this.
What is it about your mother that was the outcome? I can imagine the outcome for many other couples was the opposite of that. What was it about your mother that, or maybe the type of person that she was or is, why was she able to, this is going to sound funny, why was she able to be so accepting?
I think she really loved him.
Yeah.
Wow. She will tell me, even today, if anything happens to me, I want to be with your father. I want to be near his family. They treated me as family, and your father was my soulmate. Even when my dad they were married for 33 years. Even when he was passing and in hospice, she would be there for him. She was always there for them. They would have dinner together. I remember a couple of years ago, they celebrated New Year's together. Glenn and I were out there when my dad was in hospice and had the chance to take them out to dinner on what would have been their 53rd wedding anniversary.
Ooh, jeez Louise. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Was it perfect? No.
You had said something along the lines of it had become difficult to refer to them as my dad. Mm. Was it that difficult for you, or was it difficult for your father? Or both?
It was difficult for me to refer to my father as dad. Mm-hmm. It felt very foreign. I called him by his name. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how we never had a conversation about what he thought of me calling him by his name. But I think the answer was there. It just, I think the shame of all of that had consumed me, and the anger had consumed me. And I just, calling him by his name allowed me to separate myself from that.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that your mom and your father had gone to these clubs. What do you know about these clubs and what they were like and how they functioned for your father and your mother?
Well, how these clubs were billed, and I remember, even though I didn't open the envelopes, correspondence would come to the house from these clubs.
Ooh, I want to see it.
The newsletters. And I actually Googled recently, and I think some of the old newsletters are still online there. There was this club in Boston called the Tiffany Club.
Okay.
And it was billed, this social grouping was billed as men who dressed as women who were married to women. It was a social group where they could get together and socialize.
Mm.
And the wives would socialize. You know, I remember my mother going to the club, and she's sitting at the bar smoking her Virginia Slim, and she's sitting there, and I have to believe it was a drag queen or a trans person that came up, and they were all dressed up. And my mother said, and I'm doing it in my mother's voice, she says, "Michael, I was sitting at the bar, and this," she called it a drag queen. Mm-hmm. "This drag queen comes up, and I thought it was B. Arthur." But it was a drag queen. And, you know, I got to wonder what she was thinking back then, putting herself out in that environment. I think it's a true act of love, that you love someone that much that you're willing to make yourself so vulnerable. And I can't think of an act that is as vulnerable as doing that.
Mm. And I'm trying to think, with no Google and internet, how does one come to find out about the Tiffany Club?
That's a great question. I don't know if I know the answer to that.
Yeah. I wonder. I really do.
I should have, you know, inquired. Maybe after this I will ask my mother if she knows the answer. But there was no Google then. Mm-hmm. And this would have been 84, 85.
Part of me wonders, did she just go to a gay bar and she's like, where do you guys go sometimes? Or
Yeah. I'm curious now. I need to ask that question.
How did your father express their femininity?
How did my father express his femininity? I met Ellen, and I say this with much respect. I think that though Ellen, Ellen dressed up in women's clothing. Ellen wore wigs. Ellen wore makeup. I think that in terms of expressing themselves in a feminine way, I never really had the opportunity to see that outwardly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember one time going to, this was years later, I went to this social group for family where they wanted family to come and be there for their loved one who was transgender. Mm-hmm. And I went into this large room, and Ellen came up and greeted me, and I hugged her, and I remember her thanking me for being there. And there was an opportunity to go around the room and talk about what brought them there. And I just said, you know, it was a healing moment for me, because for years there was calling him David. There was just being angry with that side. And I just remember getting up and saying, I'm here for my father. I want him to feel loved and supported. And that's what brought me here this evening. Mm-hmm. And I think that was another turning point for me to really normalize this dark secret that had been there for so long. Normalizing it for what it was. That is huge.
It's almost like another magic spell.
Another magic spell.
Yeah.
Yes.
It made it real.
It made it real.
This is what I'm doing, and this is, and I now that I said it and I heard myself say it, yeah, that is what I'm doing. That is who I am.
Exactly.
Was that the first time you saw your Ellen in dresses and wigs and stuff?
I've only seen Ellen once.
You've seen Ellen once?
Once at that social event. I remember, and you know, I remember this, it had to have been 1986. And I went to the department store with my mom, my dad, and my brother. And the only reason why it was 1986, I remember wanting to get Madonna's True Blue on cassette. And it had just come out. And we're talking about presentation. And we're in this department store. And I hear my parents arguing in a section of the store. And there are female clothes being put in the cart.
Mm-hmm.
And my father wants my mother to buy these clothes and bring them to the cash register. And so even though my mother would go to the Tiffany Club and entertain that idea, that was on her terms. This was not on her terms. She was being put in a situation that she didn't want to be in, and she was angry, and she took all of those items. She went to the register with them and bought them. And I remember the nonverbals in the car on the way home. She pushed herself as far as she could to the side. We had a 1977 Honda Civic. It's like riding around in a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
that small.
So
she tried to push herself as far as she could over to the side of the car, and she just wasn't having it. She was angry at him, and it was because he put her in this situation. So I think this idea of presentation, you have to be an active participant in this look that you're trying to acquire, this aesthetic that you're trying to acquire. And I'm not sure whether Ellen was able to achieve that full actualization of that aesthetic look. I think Ellen created a look that Ellen wanted, but I don't know if the entire presentation, the package, came together for her.
Mm-hmm. Did Ellen live her day-to-day life as a woman, or in certain spaces?
Certain spaces.
Like not 1986 Laconia Kmart, no.
Right.
Tiffany Club, yes. And other spaces.
Other spaces where she felt safe to do that.
Yep.
Mechanically inclined, designing these large machines, a craftsman, and just could read blueprints, design blueprints, worked in a male-dominated, hyper-masculine environment. Ellen did not exist in that world. Then David still had responsibilities as a parent, make dinner, present himself as David, but then that reality for Ellen was behind a closed door and behind the scenes. We were concealed from that reality.
Mm-hmm. That is an experience I have never heard about before. I kind of think about the narratives I know about trans women, and is the word compartmentalize? Compartmentalize?
Yeah.
Too many syllables for me.
Yeah.
But that's what there's certain times and spaces where Ellen, well, I guess my question is, do you think Ellen wanted to compartmentalize in that way? Or
I think she had to survive.
Want versus need. I understand.
I mean, even as once my parents divorced, David, Ellen, started hormone therapy,
Mm-hmm.
went through electrolysis, started taking drastic measures,
Mm-hmm.
drastic means to attain this ideal sense of self. But even then, had to compartmentalize those identities in order to survive, in order to provide the necessities of life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they chose to embrace all of it, they would lose everything.
Yes.
They would lose everything.
And I'm not sure if freedom is the right word, but with the space that was given to her, the space that she claimed for herself after the divorce, it sounds like by taking the hormones and the electrolysis, was that a way to break down these different compartments? Or
I think it was small steps at trying to normalize their reality.
Yes. I feel kind of ignorant talking about it like this, but it's really the questions that are coming to my head. When did you and your family, I understand that today you accept Ellen for who that person is.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't always the way it was.
No.
How did you turn that corner? Or what happened, or what did you learn that allowed you to?
I think my best friend, who was instrumental, I think, in normalizing a lot of this. They were my ex at the time, but that's evolved over time into this family, this best friend, this brother.
Mm-hmm.
He has since passed away. They were the LGBT coordinator for a university. And so that opened my world as well to find acceptance. And so my best friend met Ellen for the first time because they were hosting a trans conference in New Hampshire, and Newman felt it would be a good idea for my dad to go.
Mm-hmm.
And really was instrumental in kind of saying, hey, I'll meet you there. I'll walk in with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll help you take the next step. And so Newman met Ellen before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an opportunity for Ellen to have an outlet and to explore that side in a environment that wasn't Again, I don't know what the Tiffany Club was. I know it was a social venue, but this was more of an educational venue. This was more of an advocacy venue, a way for probably to help raise self-esteem levels. And so it had a very empowering effect. And so, I think that I'm just trying to remember where we were going.
How did you come to accept Ellen?
How did I come to accept Ellen? Yeah, I think that it no longer. I think accepting myself first and having to go through that journey of acceptance and finally living my life openly allowed myself to embrace that aspect and really empathize with my father's journey. And just, I think I finally empathized with his journey.
Were you ever able to share that acceptance with Ellen?
Oh, yeah.
What was that? What did that look like? Or
I mean, like, I would say, oh, did you see that documentary on that Army medic who had gender reassignment surgery? Or Ellen had a friend, and I would, go out to dinner with my dad as David with his friend who had gender reassignment surgery. I just learned to integrate that part of himself into my life, and it felt right. It felt okay. I think that there, was a journey that had to happen, and in humanizing that part of my father.
And it sounds like accepting yourself allowed you to accept Alan.
Yeah.
What a big idea that we can accept others when we accept ourselves.
Right.
I wonder if it works the other way too. If by accepting others that we can learn something from that and then accept ourselves. But this is kind of my big Oprah question. This is where I owe Oprah $10 because I ask this question every time. Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Wow. What would I do differently?
About anything.
What would I do differently? I think based on the circumstances, I mean, they're really, my journey is really, there's a lot of unique circumstances that play out. And I don't think every LGBT person has had that journey. And so I believe that at the end of the day, I don't wish anything was different. I think that I'm okay with where I am today. I'm okay with that reality. I think that reality has required me to analyze, reflect, but empathize and process. And by doing that, I'm okay.
Yep, I hear that. For somebody who is learning about their parents' transness, what advice would you have for somebody who is on that journey?
I think that it's complicated. I think that I know there's a lot to take in. I know there's a lot to deal with. But if you can find commonality, if you can humanize that person, I believe the love and respect will follow. And what I would like people to know, and maybe leave with this, is that when my dad was passing, we called a bunch of people, and one of the people we called was the friend who had the gender reassignment surgery. Very smart woman, very articulate, very religious, very religious. Took it upon herself when she was at a job to order these Bibles and go around and speak to people about the Word of God, okay? And she came, my dad was going to pass in 24 hours or so, we were told. She came to the house. We had been giving my dad morphine, and he was out of it, just laying in bed. The friend came in to the room and said, "Ellen, we're supposed to have our golf date still." And it was the first time I saw my dad try to reach out and give a half hug. And Amber Amber just bent down and kissed my dad on the forehead. And to me, that was the most humanizing moment to witness, that two people who had struggled their entire lives to find commonality and concern for one another were able to share that particular moment.
Yeah.
That to me speaks volumes and just tells me that we need to do better as a society.
Yep. Wow. We're all just trying to go on a golf date with our bestie. Yeah. And we live and we die, and people,
right,
all the bullshit they say trans people are this, that, and the other. Nope. Just like you and I.
Walk the walk.
Yeah. Ooh, there we go.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of this. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for listening to The Gayest Generation. Episodes can be found on aadl.org, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.